Modern sociological theories. Social change brought about by industrialization and urbanization leads to the development of modern sociological theories. Due to this, questions about the modern society arise. There are two schools of thought that try to analyze the modern society, the Chicago School of Thought and the Frankfurt School of Thought. The Department of Sociology at the University of Chicago is concerned with the pursuit of research and theory development through objectivity and positivity to be able to understand the society. What is the relationship between the society and the individual, and how meaning is constructed and interpreted? These are the questions that the Chicago School is concerned about. In 1892, the Sociology Department of Chicago School was founded. Charles Horton Cooley, one of the forerunners of Chicago School, developed the concept of looking-glass self. This concept tells us that people have consciousness which is shaped through continuous social interaction. It is how others perceive an individual. These others that shape and perceive us are part of the primary groups where we have a face-to-face encounter, and the secondary groups where we share the little interaction. These two groups link us to the larger society where we individuals grow into a social being. Cooley used the method of sympathetic introspection, wherein a sociologist will try to put themselves in the place of the actors they were studying. Through this, the sociologist could understand the meaning and motives behind one's social behavior. But these methods seem to be very unscientific. George Herbert Mead, one of the most important thinkers associated with the Chicago School and symbolic interactionism, have an advanced work over Cooley's. The work of Mead was best explained in his book, Mind, Self, and Society. Mead thinks in terms of processes rather than structures and content. To support this, he identified four basic and interrelated stages in how an individual acts. Let's take for example how would an individual act towards hunger. The first stage of act is impulse. It involves the reaction or the stimulation to do something. A hungry person will search for and react to stimuli and will think and assess it through mental imagery. This is the stage called perception. The third stage is the manipulation. This is an important pause in the process that allows the individual to think about his actions based on his experiences, and finally, make a decision of what to act. In our example, it is a stage where the person decides to eat the food he had perceived. And the last stage is taking of the decision into action or the consummation. So if an act involves only one person, the social act involves two or more people. The act of one person may become a stimuli to another individual. This is done through gestures. This may be in the form of vocal or physical gestures. But the best way to send our message to others is through the use of language. This will be the means for the people to understand the stimuli and respond to it. This is called significance symbol. Since Mead was referred as a process philosopher, he defined the mind as a process and not a thing. It arises and develops within the social processes through communication. When we develop our mind, the self comes in. The selves arise through social activity and social relationships. It is impossible to have the self without social experiences. Mead traces the creation of self through three stages. The preparatory stage, wherein we see ourselves based on what we see in the society. The play stage is where an individual imitate or try to act the role and acquire the attitude of discrete others to themselves. It is a play of being someone else. While in the game stage, an individual will take the role of everyone who are part of the game or the society that have a definite relationship to one another. Mead also identifies two aspects or phases of the self, the I and the me. The I is the immediate response of an individual to others. It is the source of novelty in the social process. It is the location of our values, and it permits us to develop a definite personality. Without the I, the actors would be dominated by the me. The me is the organized set of attitudes or the adoption of the generalized others. The me is conscious and predictable to the society, and involves conscious responsibility. Both me and self shows the macro-level study of the society, and to balance this, Mead views society from the macro-level point. The society is the ongoing social process that precedes the mind and the self. In spite of the decline of symbolic interactionism, Irving Goffman carved out a strong and distinctive place for himself in modern sociological theories. He saw that all kinds of acts we put in our day-to-day interactions are like theatrical performances where men play different roles. Like for example, a woman may play the role of a teacher, a wife, and a mother, which is based on the role given by the society she's into. In this case, Goffman assumed that when individuals interact, They want to present themselves in a way that will be accepted by others. However, even when they present themselves, they're aware that members of the audience can disturb their performance. In order to address these disturbances, an actor must have impression management, which involves actors' technique to maintain certain impression in the face of problems they are likely to encounter and methods they will use to cope. Following this theatrical analogy, a woman in a role of a teacher may play a role when she is in the school. These roles is subdivided to mannerism and appearance, where mannerism tells the audience what sort of a role the performer expects to play, and appearance, which tells us the social status of the performer. This part is called the front stage, or the part where actual settings happen, and observation of the actor's performance occurs. Here, Goffman argued that people generally try to present an idealized picture of themselves in their front stage. Performance has a tendency to inevitably hide things, just like a teacher who tries to conceal her drinking habits to her students, which Goffman calls secret pleasures, or the behavior prior to the performance that is incompatible to their performance. All of this is called the backstage. The relationship between the performer and the audience is called the A-theme, wherein set of individuals cooperate in staging a single routine. All members of this team are aligned to each other to perform good in their roles in the society.
Another interesting work of Gutmann is Stigma, in which he argued that a person may be known as who he pretends to be or his virtual social identity, or who the person actually is or his actual social identity. Anyone who has a gap between the two identities has a stigma. A person's stigma may be known or unknown to the society. Discredited stigma is the known and obvious stigma that is known by the audience in the society. Stigmas in race, physical appearance may be problematic to the person when it comes to coping up to the standards of the society. The unknown stigma is the discreditable stigma. The problem of the actor is how to keep his stigma unknown to the audience. Gutmann argued that since we cannot fulfill all the expectations in the society at some time or other, we are all stigmatized. Another concept that Gutmann emphasized, which is a shift from his original mode of thinking, is called frame analysis. We already know that a people can define a thing or happening in a particular situation, but it is not the only aspect of a person who defines a particular act, because there is an organizational premises that establish a role, and this calls for you to act according to the way it occurs. This process starts on how we process our interpretation of schemata that we have perceived, identified, and labeled. The rule of schema that you have makes you move smooth and calls for harmonization in the interaction. By this calls a transformation in yourself and gives us understanding of what is going on. Individuals fit their actions to this understanding and ordinarily find that the ongoing world supports this fitting. This both supports the mind and activity. One of the last theorists in Chicago School of Thought is Herbert Newman, who best described his idea in his three main points: meaning, language, and thought. He argued that the human act toward things on the basis of the meanings they have for them. This is derived through constant social interaction. This meaning is best communicated through the means of language, and this meaning is being handled in, modified through an interpretative process called thought. The works of Blomer, Mead, Cooley, Gutmann gave way to the long tradition of social interactionist approach in the field of sociology. However, there was also another school of thought that was trying to analyze the society that time, and that is the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School focused on giving critics through action-oriented theories, anti-positivism, and subjectivity in order to change the society. Why class consciousness did not develop as predicted by Karl Marx. How technology and culture industry are used for mass domination. These are the questions that the theorists of the Frankfurt School were concerned of. In 1944, Horkheimer and Adorno analyzed the effect of enlightenment to the society and into the individual, arguing that the Enlightenment had not fulfilled its promise to liberate the individual through rationality. Rather, the post-Enlightenment era destroyed the self-thinking through monopolistic structures that moved towards standardization and homogenization. The central theme of their work is focused on the culture industry as a means of mass deception. arguing that the culture industry or the commercialization of culture defeat the authentic culture through mass production of standardized goods. The culture industry delivers the goods directly to the people and leave no choice but to consume them. Thus, this leads away to the people's passivity and lack of self-imagination. This is where homogenization occurs, particularly of those who control the means of production. This was later supported by Herbert Marcuse in 1964, who then criticized the culture industry in his work One-Dimensional Man. According to his work, man's critical thought is weakened by the advances and development of modern industry and technological rationality, which resulted in a totalitarian way of thinking. Totalitarian in the sense that man has freedom in his inner consciousness, but man is integrated into society and thus create the same standards as the society. Another concept is economic, social, and political freedom, where according to Marcuse, all of us are free, but only within the parameters imparted by technological rationality. For example, in the marketplace, we may have a choice, but we cannot engage in economic competition. Here, only the one who dominate had the power to control everyone. This is the reason why man is called one-dimensional. It is because of technological rationality brought about by the capitalists, which repress individuals' critical thought. According to Marcuse, capitalist culture creates the so-called false needs. False needs happen when man chooses his repressive needs or things he do not really need over the things that he really need to have. One-dimensional man also explored two specially insidious ways in which he believed had succeeded in dominating American society. The first way is by the abuse of language. It becomes one-dimensional because it limits and manipulates the way of thinking. The second way is by the means of the sublimation, or giving up one's liberty in favor of material things. In conclusion, Herbert Marcuse believed that advances in technology creates domination and control, which makes a man one-dimensional. Adorno, Horkheimer, and Marcuse almost pointed out the same thing, but Jürgen Habermas criticized their pessimisms over the formation of true consciousness of the people. Instead, he made a theory that is focused on creation of consciousness through consensus, and it is called theory of communicative action.
Jürgen Habermas used two terms in his work. First, the purpose of rational action or work, which is to achieve a goal and to pursue self-interest. This is distinguished between instrumental action, where a single actor rationally calculates the means to achieve his goals, and strategic action, where an individual binds with other people to achieve his goals. Another term is the communicative action or the interaction. It is, on the other hand, wherein an individual do not pursue personal goals. Instead, they interact with each other to understand and harmonize their action on the basis of common situation definition. But for Habermas, there are communicative distortions which serve as a barrier and limit the acts to communicate to each other. According to him, rationalization would remove restriction in communication. Purposive rational action seeks the elimination of barriers to have undistorted works, while Habermas' communicative theory is interested in the elimination of barriers to have free communication.
The critiques made by these theorists contributed a lot in the development of the neo-Marxism tradition in the field of sociology. The influence of Chicago School reached other theorists in a way that they patterned their theories in line with their approach. Harold Garfinkel developed a new approach in his work, Studies in Ethnomethodology. He gave focus on the methods and practices of people that they use to accomplish their everyday transactions. This study is more focused on the procedures of how people process their accounts of situation and not the account of situation per se. There are two main areas of studies: the conversational analysis and the institutional setting. In the field of conversational analysis, the focus is on how our conversations are organized. The very essence of this study is the relationship of the utterance, not the relationship of the speaker and the receiver. An example of which is a party wherein laughter is being generated. The organization of the utterance is being shown here in a sense that the speaker will have to laugh either at the end or at the middle of the conversation to usher laughter from other hearer. Another area of research for ethnomethodology is institutional setting, wherein the analysis of conversation and social interaction takes place. An example of this is the telephone operator in an emergency center. They happen to be structured in a way that confusion arises due to lack of opening, sequences, and recognition. It is shown that specific organization of conversation cause mishap. This approach seeks and highlights how social order is achieved by the interaction of people rather than order being the framework upon which action takes place.
Anthony Giddens also tried to integrate ideas from macro and micro level theories that was published in his work, The Constitution of Society. Anthony Giddens' structuration theory is the relationship between the agency and the structure. This theory intends to illuminate the duality in the dialectical interplay of agency and structure. He states that all social action involves structure and all structure involves social action. Thus, agency and structure are inextricably linked and ongoing human activity. These two schools of thought help us to understand the modern society. But what does modernity really mean? According to Anthony Giddens, modernity is best described through the rise of four basic institutions: the capitalism that covers production, private ownership, and capital, where the class system is derived. The next one is the industrialism, which are the production of goods, transportation, and communication. Next is the surveillance, which is the supervision or the regulation of people in the political sphere. And last is the control that the state enforces through violence. He compared modernity in a juggernaut, which is a powerful and unstoppable force that puts in danger everything in its path. He intends to convey that modernity is pushing towards the future and it is sometimes out of control. What the individuals do is to be reflexive, to examine big or small problems and adjust their actions. As a result, the juggernaut of modernity is a dynamic system of constantly adjusting to the new problems. However, not all problems can be explained through modern sociological theories. That is why a new approach arrived, the postmodernism.